Welcome back to Bookview TV. Now, we've had a cancellation this week, so I've decided to use this time in this particular program to sell some of my own books, hopefully, and at least give you a little bit of an insight into the writing process and what actually goes on. Long after the completion of Edith Unshackled, we were entering into the campaign to elect a United States president in 2012. Now, U.S. politics has long been something of great interest here, both on the Worldview show as well as something that I've had a passion for the last 7 years in starting UK Progressive magazine. When we looked at this particular opportunity to write about the campaign, I was struck by something that was being done by Politico magazine in Washington, D.C. Now, they're a daily newspaper as well as a web publication that's largely distributed on Capitol Hill and across Washington, D.C., but the website is viewed around the world, and they do a lot of insight into campaigns and what's actually happening. Well, I watched what they were doing, and over the course of the campaign, they committed to writing a series of short e-books. And I thought, that's interesting. And so I decided I would take a look at what was actually going on to see if I could do something like that. Now, I've received a call from Paul Ford. He's the BBC Wales producer for a television show at the time that no longer exists, radio show, called Jamie and Louise. And what he said was, Jamie and Lou were out on summer holiday, but we were already starting in the early part of 2012 to see the craziness that was going on in the Republican primaries. Those primaries were happening pretty much every week, and every week there was a new debate, and every week somebody was sticking their foot in their mouth or perhaps even other locations, because they were really saying some of the dumbest things ever heard from a politician. Yet these people were attempting to run for the presidency of the United States, which is a fairly serious situation. But we had a bunch of clowns. So I sat down and I said, okay, I want to because Paul said to me, he said, can you give us a kind of a bluffer's guide to what's going on in this election process in the United States? And I was more than happy to help him out, and I actually worked with the guest host that week, and we put together about a 20-minute program which sort of explained how the U.S. goes about selecting its president on a quadrennial basis every 4 years. And it was a very, very good segment. It got a lot of good comments from them, and it got a lot of good comments here. And I actually wrote it up as an article, and I thought, Politico's doing ebooks, why don't I do an ebook? So I started with Lipstick on This Pig. It ended up being about a 55-page ebook, which I sold for, I think, about £1.99, $2.99 on Amazon. And it got a lot of responses. People really liked the fact that somebody had taken the time to both explain the process and talk a little bit about the seven dwarfs, the clown characters that were planning to run for the Republican nomination on the U.S. side. Around about the time that book came out, all of these states under something called the American Legislative Exchange Committee, or ALEC, were producing these incredibly difficult bills, which continues to this day, to both limit and restrict a woman's right to control her own reproductive process. They were trying to stop abortion. They were trying to stop the pill. They were trying to do everything they possibly could to, from transvaginal ultrasounds to incredibly invasive procedures, and they were really attacking women at an alarming rate. So as that first book was beginning to gain some traction, I realized the second book needed to be written about the war on women. So I entitled it rather clumsily, but it was very effective, The Vagina Wars, because literally they were talking about no one could get an abortion unless they underwent this process in which they would actually have to have a transvaginal ultrasound inserted into their vagina to determine if there was a fetal heartbeat. I mean, these Republican, white, angry old men were going to do everything they possibly could to make a woman's right to choose more difficult. As that book began to gain traction, we were now heading towards the summer months, and I realized that they had not let up at all. And indeed, they were not just having a war against women, they were having a war against everybody in the 99%. They were attacking women, they were attacking Hispanics, they were attacking African Americans, they were passing restrictive voting rights laws, they were demanding ID that had never been demanded commented before, they were really determined to make it extraordinarily difficult for anyone of color who would be likely to vote Democratic to actually get out there and vote. And they did succeed to some point. I mean, they did manage to cut a few points off the final margin of Barack Obama, but he still ended up winning in a landslide. And it was one of those situations where I began to look at all of the ways in which they were throwing monkey wrenches and other obstructions in the way to sort of stop this thing. And then I realized it was time to move on and tackle the 500-pound gorilla. And coming up tomorrow in part 3, we'll talk about the 500-pound gorilla in the room that nobody much talked about, and that was the fact that had Mitt Romney won, the United States would have had its first Mormon president, and what the implications of that were. So coming up in the next segment, we'll take a look at the Mormon issue, and we'll take a look at getting ourselves ready for the convention that actually led to the final book, Billionaire Boys Election Freak Show. All this when Book View continues after this.